Hey, 4C divers, welcome to our Facebook Live. Thank you for tuning in. We've got Mr. Wayne MacWilliams over here. Say hello, Wayne. All right, guys, let's check in with each other. How are we all doing? It is August finally. So, you know what that means. We've got Goliath Groupers coming to the Rex here in the Palm Beach area. So, of course, we're going to make sure that we give you guys lots of great information and lots of great events so that you can go out and check them out and get some great photos of them. All right, let's check in. Say hello to everybody. Hi. We've got anybody here listening in from here locally, here in the state of Florida, or outside of Florida, or outside of the country? Give us a hello, say hello to us, and give us a thumbs up, smiley face, or a heart emoji. Let us know that you're enjoying tonight's presentation. Guys, also, you want to go before 6:45. Go to the 4C website. Make sure that you registered for tonight's event, because if you don't register, then you won't be able to get a chance to win one of our prizes. So our prize tonight, we have 3 different Goliath grouper dives scheduled. One in Palm Beach, one in Boynton, and one in Jupiter. And you could win a spot on one of those dives. So make sure you register tonight before 6:45. All you got to go to www.force-e.com, find the event page, and you're going to register for tonight. You got to do it before that time period, guys, because after that, I got to close it so we can do our raffle. I'll provide the link in the comments below. Look at all these people. Hey, guys, thanks for tuning in. All right, so guys, if you're going to go out and check out these Goliath groupers, of course you're going to want to take some really cool photographs of them. But have you ever noticed that when you get out there and your strobes are not that right, or just the settings, there's just everything's off and you're just not getting that clear, beautiful picture of that Goliath, or maybe even like a different angle or a different creative way to get Goliath grouper pictures? Well, guess what, guys? We enlisted our local photographer, Mr. Wayne MacWilliams, and he and I have done great dives together checking out these Goliath groupers. And so he's going to show you some of the photos he's taken here locally and talk about ways to get those types of photos. All right, so everybody, let's go ahead and say hello one more time. Check in with us. Make sure you're registered for tonight's free raffle at the end of this presentation. All right, Wayne, it is all you. I'm going to go ahead and pull up your slide, and you're ready to go.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome, of course. And of course, we're getting ready to have our peak season. So we've decided to take the opportunity to talk a little bit about the basics of wide-angle photography, of course, with an emphasis on the Goliath grouper. I think when we think about wide-angle imagery, we can be much more grandiose and impressive. However, it can be more challenging to fill the frame, compositionally more challenging because it all needs to be aesthetically pleasing, of course. More decisions need to be made and more to illuminate, possibly, probably, unfortunately, more backscatter to contend with. I think we'll all agree that cameras are very sophisticated and they're great at what they do, but they're not creative on their own. Simply having the desire to capture what you see in a way that you want the image represented requires you to take control. One of your first steps is understanding your camera and strobe features, controls, and capabilities. Shooting in manual mode versus program mode is your way of taking that control. Do you want to take images or do you want to create them? There is a difference. The word photography literally means drawing with light, which derives from the Greek words photo, meaning light, and graph, meaning to draw. All right, so I've taken just a spec sheet of an arbitrary strobe, CNC D2. Now, if you're going to purchase or upgrade, all of these numbers, of course, are very, very important. But for us and our concerns right now in this evening, we're going to discuss GN and beam angle. And if you notice, I've got a little asterisk by the GN, and we're going to get to that again in a second. So as an example, the CNC D2 has a guide number of 32 with a beam angle of 80. And then you slide over and put a diffuser on it and soften the light and spread it out to a 100-degree beam angle. And then the GN changes to 24. And then if we slide over one more, to another diffuser and spread it out even more and diffuse the light to 120-degree beam angle, the GN goes to 20. So there's a bit of a difference there. Well, the GN. The technology is changing, the lenses, the reflectors, the tubes, the diffusers, which we all know that, which helps redefine the value of those specifications, those numbers. The GN is not black and white, especially for underwater photographers. We want quality, not just quantity. GN is metered from the center of the beam. If all of our images were shot with this portion of our light source, fine, but we don't. If you look up real quickly to the flash tube shapes, you'll see linear, circular, dual linear. And one of the gurus, Alex Mustard, kind of put it this way. The absolute power is also not so important because with most good flash guns, we don't use them on full power much. However, the quality of light determined by pattern of the beam always affects our photos on all powers. All good underwater flash guns give a wide coverage, but still differ in how much of their light they get out to the wider parts of the beam. A wide, even beam gives a better quality of light without unsightly hot spots and produces a more even illumination on the subject in wide-angle photography. These flash guns are also easier to use, being more forgiving of slight errors in how you position them. All right, real quick, this is kind of important because it's the technical side and then we'll get into the artistic side or the creative side, but you have to have a basic understanding of your equipment. And obviously strobes are a big part of that. The graph below compares all flash guns when set to give the same exposure in the center of the frame, which replicates a photographer setting the flash gun to give a correct exposure on the subject. All flash guns lose power as the light is spread wider, but the less the light falls off, the less steep the slope of the graph, the more even the illumination. All right, so this was basically, what they did was a strobe comparison. Retro did it, and in part of their research. And if you notice at the top, the red and the blue, they're very, very close. With the least steep fall off was the CCAM and the Retro. Down at the bottom, and I'm going to show you why, is the D2, which is the strobes that I used to have, and the newer Enon 330. They have the greatest fall off, the steepest. Now, when we actually look at it, if you go down to the bottom, in the bottom left, look at the beam of light. It's kind of inconsistent. And the reason I'm showing you this is ideally we want soft, even illumination from the center to the edges. It'll be easier to control and more forgiving. So if you've ever taken a shot and you're kind of wondering, why am I getting a hot spot there? And you're kind of struggling with it and you don't really understand why, this kind of gives you a little bit more of an understanding. Enon recognized that with that same 330, and they came out with a new lens. If you look at it, it looks like a fisheye. So the long and the short of it is, it's okay. If you've got the 330, now you have a little bit better understanding how you can change the characteristics of the beam angle. All right, we need a guide number in our formula to determine our strobe power setting, which is distance times the F number. It gives you the required, the GN. Now we have a quantity. Your job is to understand what may be required for your system to attain the quality that you desire. It may be just a simple diffuser. It may not. Remember to adjust the GN. The takeaway is the number doesn't tell the whole story, because the reason I say this is because most people, if they're looking to buy a strobe, they just want to get the most powerful strobe. Unfortunately, as we just showed, it's not just that easy. So just be aware of it, that's all. The GN is the power of the strobe, and the beam angle is the area of the strobe. This illustration, this 3D cone, helps to represent a picture in your mind's eye of how light is projected from your strobes. Now, that beam angle is no longer just a number to you. The emitted light is three-dimensional. It's straight, up and down, side to side, basically coming out in the shape of a cone or a funnel. Think of this light as a volume. What contributes to the quality of this light? Well, as we just discussed, the pattern of the light and the positioning of the strobes. The positioning of the strobes and the pattern of the light can make or break your image. So we're going to go ahead and talk about strobes and strobe positioning. All right. So here's the standard basic setup. Strobes aim straight ahead, 9 to 3 positioning. I got my Goliath candles about 3 feet in front of me. I've got the strobes out approximately 3 feet to the side. I've got the diffusers back to about where the handles are. And sometimes I'll even pull them back even further. Why? Because of flare. All right. So now we've got this set up. If we take a shot, I may get good exposure. The problem is, why is the beam angle important? We're trying to rim light. Use the edges of our beam angle to cut across our subject. Why? We're trying to minimize illuminating the water column between the lens and the subject. This, of course, will help minimize backscatter. So in this situation, I've got the beam angle cut down across at 60 degrees from the left and 60 degrees from the right, and I'm illuminating the water column between the lens and the subject halfway. A simple change, we remember, with that little D2, all I got to do is pop off my diffusers in this situation. Now, from the left and from the right, it's coming in at 40 degrees. Well, it goes from 120 degree beam angle to 80 degree beam angle. The only other adjustment we need to make is we went from a GN of 20 with the diffusers on, and now it's a GN of 32. Okay, so what I've done is just helped rim light or illuminate the subject with the edges of the strobe. All right, while I've got this image up, please take note. When the strobes are out wide like this, your movements, however small, have a dramatic effect on strobe's beam angle. Envision rotating the lens only 3 inches to the right candle. Not only will it affect the beam angle of both the strobes, but because of the way light travels through water, the inverse square law, the left strobe is closer, the right strobe is further away. Part of the image may now be in shadow or overexposed. It suffices to say the further from the axis, in this case it's the lens, the greater the radius movement. Strobes. Just be aware of that. All right. Imagine if you weren't paying attention with everything the same. I got the diffusers on. I got my strobes pulled in tight. And what I'm doing as far as illuminating the column of water, I'm going to be spending a lot of time removing an awful lot of backscatter. All right. One of the other things, all right, so with the same standard setup, 9 to 3, strobes aim straight ahead, with rays, with Goliath groupers, with sharks, divers, manatees, we find ourselves often either just hovering above the sand or in the sand. If I took this shot, I'm going to get light rays. Got a good exposure on my Goliath candles there, but I'm going to get light rays in the sand. A real simple solution. Well, here you can see I've got light rays. I didn't adjust the strobes, did a quick shot, got good illumination on the diver and the Goliath, but I got the light rays. Simple solution, raise them, no more light rays. Good. Everything else stayed the same. I just simply positioned the strobe slightly different because I was on sand. No more light rays, all good to go. All right. I love this image for a couple of reasons, but I want to make a couple of points with this. First of all, Jackie's a very good photographer. And let's just assume for a second the strobes were aimed straight ahead. She wasn't actually taking photographs at this moment, but assuming she was, knowing what we do now know about beam angle, she's shooting the Enon 240s with the diffuser on. They put out a beam angle of 110 degrees. So if the strobes were aimed straight ahead and she was engrossed with her subject, as we all do, Either she drifted a little bit closer after positioning her strobes, or in this situation, the subject moved closer to her. We're excited. We're firing away. We're just enamored because our eyes are fixed to the viewfinder. But if that was to take place, she would be very disappointed, because at the 55-degree angle from the left and from the right, she would be illuminating from the back of the hard spine dorsal back to the tail. So from the back of the hard spine dorsal all the way forward to the mouth would be in shadow. That's how your strobe positioning can make or break your image. And this also includes macro as well. All right, the other thing about wide angle lenses and fisheyes is perspective. Right now, both of these subjects are approximately 4 feet away from me, and they're in proper perspective. The Goliath is 4.5 feet long from her head to her fins, about 7 feet long. So they look like they're in proper perspective. But with that lens, this is the exact same two subjects. When one of those subjects gets a lot closer to you in the foreground, this Goliath was 1 foot away, it makes it look much, much larger. And we know that he isn't. That's just called forced perspective. So you can use that characteristics of a fisheye or a wide angle lens as a creative tool. That's what I just wanted to bring to your attention. All right, just like strobes have numbers that we need for decision making, so do our cameras and lenses. The apertures, or the F numbers, affects exposure of artificial and ambient light, depth of field, contrast, image sharpness. Equally important to that depth of field is the distance to the subject. Also, the focal length of the lens and the camera sensor size. All 4 of those items are what you're going to see on a depth of field chart. By taking a quick look at a depth of field chart before your dive, or anytime for that matter, with your chosen lens, you can familiarize yourself with just a couple of aperture, distance, depth of field scenarios. Then you can adjust. You won't have to do that forever. Just get a feel for it. Then you can adjust the strobe power setting. Remember that GN we talked about, based on the distance to the subject and, of course, your chosen aperture. A hint, a simple, convenient tool in your arsenal is your arm. My shoulder socket to my fingertips is 2 feet. What's yours? You take that tool with you wherever you go. You can use your arm's length to roughly visualize your distance to the subject. When I first started doing this with digital, and I could get an instant feedback, I would adjust my strobes, swim up to the side of the wreck, take a shot. I'd stick my arm out in front just to visualize approximately how far I was. And then I just would visualize that, give me basically a ballpark idea of what 2 feet was. Okay, shutter speeds affects exposure of ambient light as well as motion or the lack thereof. ISO numbers affects the gain, or we say sensitivity, which affects the exposure and the noise or grain. The takeaway, as you can see, these numbers can serve more than one function. This applies to all types of photography, especially macro. Real quick, like, we're going to take the scenario, crop sensor camera, which is what I shoot, a 10-17, which is a fairly common lens with a focal length of 10 millimeters. And let's just look at this depth of field chart real briefly. Let's just pick a distance of, 3 feet. And we'll slide over with an aperture of only 5.6. My depth of field starts at 1.5 feet, and it goes out to infinity. Well, that's good to know. Well, one of the other characteristics of a fisheye in a close or wide angle lens is you can get very, very close. So let's just say I got lucky and I had a cooperative subject and I can get 2 feet away. What happens? Well, it's a pretty dramatic difference. So a little over 1 foot out to a little over 6 feet. So now my depth of field went to 5 feet. That's still pretty good. But let's just say I'm at 2 feet and I wanted a little bit more. So I'll slide over and go up to F8. So then I go from 1 foot out to 49 feet. So I'm not trying to memorize this, but I do feel, though, that I want to familiarize myself with this so that I have a basic understanding why I'm making changes. All right, there are decisions that need to be made that can be influenced by several variables. We just discussed 4 of them. Your mission, if you choose to accept it, is to educate yourself about those numbers, which we now know should be thought of as tools. All right. Since we just looked at a depth of field chart before we jumped in the water with our desired lens, we know that depth of field is not much of an issue until we get inside, let's say 2 feet, which is close focus wide angle. In the unlikely event, we need more depth of field because we're shooting 5.6 and we want more than that 5-foot depth of field. We just go to F8 and now it's 48 feet. Now I can see the whites of the Goliath Grouper's eye, and he's a foot away, and I can also see the whites of the diver in the background. This Goliath is less than a foot away. I can see his eye. I can see the pupil of the whites of the eye of the shark, the teeth, the nostrils, and F8. So here I see Jerry, and she's got a cooperative subject, and I'm thinking, all right, I got to start making some decisions here. I think I can get within about 2 feet because it's being pretty cooperative with her. I would like to get her into my depth of field. So I put it F8, okay? And then I have to figure out, I want to meter the water. Do I want light blue? Do I want medium blue? Do I want dark blue? So I meter the water with my chosen F8, which will give me the depth of field that I think that I want. And then I meter the water and I get a shutter speed of 80. Okay, so now I've got a couple of the numbers. I know my distance, 2 feet, and I know my aperture is F8. So putting in my formula, I now need to know how powerfully or what my setting should be on my strobe. If I take 2 feet and I multiply it by F8, I've got a GN of 16. That's what I'm going to need. But I've got a GN of 32 on my strobe. We know that. We already did our research. And so I just put it on half power and I'll be good. That'll be a good starting point. Same thing with Enrique here. I knew that I was going to be able to get pretty close. I put it on F6 and I was able to get everything in focus, everything from the scales right up to the rocks in the background. With 5.6, I was able to get the Goliath, the diver, and the wreck in the background. But I would only know that if I took a familiarization with the chart. Okay, so after you do your diver safety checks, upon descending, you're stepping up the dive platform, you're entering the beach, you do your safety checks, it's time for you to switch your mindset to photographer mode. Start assessing the conditions that will impact your settings. P.S. Now is the time for you, and if you're lucky enough to have a model, to go all fish whispery. I really mean this. If you chase, you'll lose the race. Nicole always let the Goliath come to her. We literally dove on the caster for 40 minutes, and I never left. Nicole never left. Wilbur never left. So we just worked it. But neither one of us were chasing. The fish followed her. All right. They can appear harmless and even cute, but they can be heard loud and clear. Absolutely untrainable and potentially can turn on you. The other is the Goliath group. I don't know anything about them. I'm just kidding you. All right. I want to try and minimize my intrusion to their home. I am not just looking for a Goliath grouper. I'm trying to see behavior. Is it swimming away from the divers? Is it standing its ground? Is it hiding under the ledge or wreckage that may make the Goliath feel trapped? Is it hovering over the sand? Is it in a mild current and you feel like you can gracefully swim parallel, then slowly continue to swim in a position to get some shots? That's okay. But if the current is honking, don't waste your time. You'll be blowing serious bubblage, huffing and puffing. Then if you can get ahead, when you go to focus and take the shot, the current will take you right into the subject. P.S. In that strong current, your strobes will more than likely have moved out of position anyways to really send home the message. The bottom line is you're observing the big picture to get the small picture. Unless, of course, you want a whole bunch of these. All right. As I'm descending and I'm starting to take notice of the water clarity, the particulate matter, the water color, the current, the brightness because of the cloud cover, the time of day, am I getting dappled light? Do I need to have a background? Do I need to enter the wreck or wreckage to minimize backscatter? Do I need to lighten or darken the water with the shutter speed because of the backscatter? Or the shutter speed in the aperture because I've got sun rays or sunballs that I want to include in the shot? Do I need to adjust my ISO? Knowing how or why you're considering these adjustments sure will make your decision making a lot easier. No settings are perfect. You're just trying to stack the odds in your favor of getting your desired image. Getting close to a background can help fill the frame. This can help minimize backscatter. Framing can be a consideration to help draw the eye. As soon as you looked at this shot, the majority of the photograph is the yellow cup coral. But the first thing that you saw was I framed it and you saw the Goliath. Okay, where it is darker in the image showing water, backscatter is easier to see. The entire image has it, but the background helps. Look in the bottom right-hand corner. You see the backscatter in that dark water area. There's two spots there. Back by his tail where the water is darker blue, you can see the backscatter. The background simply helped it. These are some of the things you're thinking about as you're making your descent. When you choose an aperture and your strobes do not have the power with the settings that you've chosen, whether it's because of the aperture is too high or the distance is too far, then and only then will I change my ISO. That's one of the reasons I'll change my ISO. Here's a situation where I observed the Goliath, and as I got closer than, let's say, in 8 feet, he wanted to turn around and swim back in the wreckage. I thought, all right, I'll just use the wreckage as a frame. But I was far enough away that I needed to get a couple more stops of light for the strobes. I just spun it up to give myself a couple more stops with my ISO. Other times, I don't want to put out a full dump with my strobes. I don't want to bother the animal. So that's another time that I'll consider changing my ISO. How does the aperture affect shutter speed? Opening up the lens aperture allows more light to pass into the camera, which allows the photographer to capture a properly exposed image at a faster shutter speed. Okay. Stopping down or reducing the lens aperture, on the other hand, reduces the amount of light entering the camera, which requires use of a slower shutter speed to yield an image with the same brightness. This reciprocity, increase one, decrease the other, creates the desired balance. So prioritize what is most important in the scene. The ambient light. Is it depth of field? Is it motion, lack of motion? Then adjust according to obtain your desired balance for that given image. If we think about this as being a lot of numbers, it can be overwhelming. But if we think of the numbers as just being tools that serves more than one purpose, which they do, then we can use that to our benefit. It becomes a little less intimidating, or at least it did it for me. It used to overwhelm me. Here's one of the types of lighting, which is balanced lighting, meaning the lighting is even with the strobe, the foreground, and the ambient light in the background. So it's time to prioritize your settings. I now think of those numbers as tools, as we just discussed, that I want to use to my benefit. So I start to prioritize. I prioritize an aperture based primarily on how close to the subject I can or want to get. That in turn affects my depth of field. Depth of field may or may not be important, like in this image. Then I've taken that chosen aperture, in turn can affect my shutter speed when I'm metering for the desired watercolor or scene brightness, and they're not the same, and I'll tell you about that in a second. Now we can see how aperture affects the shutter speed. The ISO is the last adjustment that I'll do if I can't stay within those settings. All right. This is not balanced lighting. I prioritize the turtle, then the sun rays being more important than the reef exposure. It's not balanced lighting. I adjusted the shutter speed to darken the water, adding more contrast and freezing the light rays. I increased the aperture to shrink the size of the sunball. Then lastly, I adjusted the strobe power according to that chosen aperture and the distance to the turtle. The strobes were used just to kiss a little bit of light and color on the turtle, allowing the ambient light rays to create a moody effect. The point of it is that if you do decide to use your strobes and you wanted to use your sync speed as one of the tools, then you just need to know what your sync speed combination is with your strobes and your camera. If I would have used F4 on this, the entire scene would have been blown out. Okay, so I spin it up to F22 to shrink that ball of light. Well, now that I've done that, if I want to use my strobes, do I have enough power based on the F22 and the distance I am from my subject? Same thing here. I ratcheted it up to my max with everything, and I needed to be close enough to the subject to be able to put some light on it. So you just need to know what your camera, lens, strobe capabilities are. These next two images are taken within less than a second of each other. Everything is exactly the same, except in that second, I scrolled my shutter speed to a higher number to darken the water. I went from a shutter speed of 80 to a shutter speed of 320. And I didn't edit the images. I just wanted to show you one of the things. The darker water creates more contrast, allowing highlighted backscatter to show it all its glory to show up more. When you're assessing your options, this can be one of the other considerations. One of the advantages of wide-angle lens or a fisheye lens is the ability to get close, very close. This helps fill the frame, which can help minimize backscatter. If the animal gets close, preferred versus you trying to get closer, it allows you to get close. Remember to adjust accordingly. You pull your strobes in closer to the housing and then pull them back. So if you can imagine, if my strobes were stuck out there 3 feet just because I had a wide angle or a fisheye lens, I would have totally had him swim inside the coverage of the beam angle. Depth of field is pretty much a non-issue with a fisheye lens, as we saw. I did not need f11, but my strobes were on minimum power, and the Goliath was so close. If I continued to shoot at my desired 5.6, all the light areas would have been blown out. You need to have some idea what all those numbers represent. And I tell you, I did it a couple of times where the operculum, the inside the mouth, and the lips were all blown out because I had too much strobe power based on how close it was. All right. The good news is once you set up on a given dive and your distance to the subject remains pretty close to the same, you'll only need a slight tweaking of your shutter speed. Example, because the camera angle to the sun, or you get cloud cover, or you get deeper, and you just want to adjust the water color. So if you're staying relatively 5 feet away from the reef or 3 feet away from the Goliaths, then you're just adjusting your shutter speed. All right. When metering for the water color or the brightness, I usually use my center weight mode, and I aim it at the desired column of the water. The higher I aim it, the lighter the color, and then I'll meter for that. If I'm just going to try to determine the brightness, so if you think back with the Goliath inside the wreck that I was pretty far away from, I wasn't metering for blue water. I was just metering for the scene brightness. Then I'll put it on matrix. Different camera manufacturers use different word evaluative, but for me in the Nikon, we just call it the matrix, where it takes the whole scene into determination for exposure. Other considerations would be to shoot in continuous versus single shot. I use back button autofocus and shoot on continuous. As long as I hold back button, it continues to track and autofocus. As long as I hold down the shutter, it will continue to capture images until my 14-shot buffer fills. Okay, if you want to consider it, what you need to be aware of is that the power settings of your strobe can recycle fast enough and keep up with your camera. So that's what you do at the dining room table. I'd rather do that at the dining room table than in 80 feet of water. So you sit at the dining room table, put it on quarter power, put it on continuous. You'll need to make some adjustments for that and fire away. If the strobe can keep up and you don't miss a beat, you don't get any black frames, then continue to go up. For my retros, I can go to about a half power. If I go past a half power, I'll get 2 properly exposed shots and then I'll get a black frame. So you just need to know what your camera is capable of. And you're not going to probably be able to use TTL because it has a pre-flash. I also use continuous because I get fish bombs where little fish get in front of the eyes of the diver or the other fish. I get bubbles in the wrong places, of course, across the eyes. I get flare, glare in the mask, just like in this particular shot with Nicole, and for many other reasons. So try back button autofocus, know what your strobe recycle capacity is, and give it a shot. This Goliath did this 3 times with me. And so, yes, I am very glad they don't bite. So that would be it. So hope you got something out of that, and y'all can go back to your regularly scheduled programming.
That's awesome. Awesome, Wayne. Thank you so much. Wow. How cool were some of those images, you guys? If you have any questions for Wayne, please type them in the comment section and we are going to answer them. So hold on. Let me.
Try.
There we go. All right. We've got that out of the way. All right. So just to let you guys know, if you want to get photos of Goliaths with divers, you can always hire me. I'll come out, or actually I'll just, show up on the boat and say, Nicole, get next to that grouper, because why not? I always like good photos of myself because I'm usually behind the lens, right? I'm usually the one taking the photos. So,
and I will say, when I mentioned the fish whisperer, I say it in jest, but I'm dead serious with it because it really makes a difference. When you see divers chasing behind Goliaths, they stand no chance. When you slow down, stop to smell the roses, and actually let the Goliath come to you, or just feel relaxed and they don't feel threatened, it makes all, and that includes little macro shots as well, but especially with Goliath, take advantage of their curiosity, just like we're curious of them.
Absolutely. And I know we're talking about wide angle, but get creative with your shots. I know some of my favorite photos I've actually used and done silhouettes. You're still using some wide angle techniques there. It's just a little different tweaking. So Wayne, if you were trying to maybe get a silhouette of a grouper, what would you suggest for someone? Obviously you need to be below it, shooting up at the
Absolutely. Well, the thing of it is that first of all, you definitely want to be prepared to bracket, meaning prepared to make some adjustments. I don't really ever look at my histogram, but I have my camera set up for blinkies, which means that I've got a spot that's way overexposed. So the part is that you're trying to get close enough to the Goliath where the Goliath is really blocking out the majority of the light, because otherwise you're going to have blown out images. So obviously getting as close as you possibly can, making yourself wide. Already know before you even start with that, go ahead and turn up your shutter speed to its maximum. If you're going to just do silhouettes and you're not going to be using your strobes, I will say that you just need to know what's required from your camera, because if your strobes are still turned on, you won't be able to go past the default setting of 2/50th or 320 in my situation. But if my strobes are turned off, it's no longer a factor. I can shoot at a shutter speed of 3,000 if I want. So if I'm just going to do a silhouette and I'm not going to kiss it with any light and use the strobes, then turn the strobes off if you want. And then take a couple shots, refocus, and do it again. Enrique, I saw there that you noticed you recognized yourself.
So, you know, again, we're talking about creative shots. So the silhouette shot is a creative shot. I've actually, I don't know if you've ever seen this shot. I can't remember who the photographer is, and I'm not gonna be able to find it in time to show you guys, but I saw somebody submitted in one of the photo contests. There was like a down shot of the Goliath grouper, and it was like their spine. And it just looks so cool. And then I think they did it in black and white too. So it looked really cool. And so
well, it's a similar to me, you know, taking the photograph of the tail.
Yeah.
That Goliath was actually 3 inches in front of me. His lip was actually on my port, and I just took it because it was a little bit different. By all means, eyes, mouse only, working with your aperture. And like I say, sometimes when you're coming down and you're assessing, I truly do think of those things. As I'm coming down, and if I'm looking and I see a whole lot of backscatter, I'm thinking, all right, where's the wreckage? Because I'm going to try to get inside, because if I'm with a lot of backscatter and I got that 30, 40 foot visibility, maybe the water is not very pretty, I already know what my images are going to look like. So if I'm stuck where I have to take photos from 6 feet away, I'm not going to take it anymore. So I'm going to put myself to get as close as I can, and I got to suck it up, Buttercup, because that's just the way it is. It's just a nature of the beast. We have backscatter. All we're trying to do is try to think of those things that might help me blend it in. I mean, I do open my shutter and my aperture to lighten the water to help me with that. And sometimes I want that more of a cobalt blue, darker. Take a few shots, I kind of zoom in and I think, man, there's just too much backscatter. So I reassess. That's what we're doing. If we're going down there, we're experimenting, we're trying. But that's what I've learned from my experience. Sometimes, you know, we're talking about trying to fill the frame, but you can't always do that. And so the water that was around yourself and Wilbur, I had backscatter. Not that, until they're able to invent beams of light that go around the backscatter, we're going to have to make these adjustments. And that's just the nature of the beast.
Absolutely. And, you know, we don't always have the bluest of water, the clearest of water. You get that whale snot in there.
Oh, yeah.
It combines with that, you know, and so Forrest actually asked, like, how do you adjust for the green versus when you have blue water? And I would
Well, that would be color temperature. Yeah. And the issue with that is that if the water was truly green, I suggest embrace it. And if you have the ability to go in, because most photographers, I'm not talking about videographers, most of us shoot raw. And the other thing we do is we shoot auto white balance. And one of the things you'll remember, this piece of advice, if you want to get a really good shot of a sunset, start with a good sunset. So if you've got green water, make it emerald green. Mm-hmm. Trying to make beautiful, clear, cobalt blue water out of green, creamy, brownish, get inside the wreck, go in the wreck, forget about the color of the water. It's just not going to happen. So if it's greenish, embrace it. Try to make it greener. Strangely enough, we didn't get into it because each one of those things that we talked about, we can get off onto several other chapters. And one of them, which I didn't even really get into, was color temperature. And strangely enough, if somebody wanted to contact me, I'll go into it because not everybody cares about it. But our strobe color temperature indirectly affects the color of the water. We know that your strobes will not change the color of the ocean. We know that. but indirectly, the color temperature of your strobes can, if you're shooting auto white balance. So if anybody wants to contact me, I'll briefly explain to them how it does, but that's why I'm saying when I'm going down and it's not a pretty blue, I'm thinking I want to fill the background with something that's pretty. I want to try to, we call it negative space. I call it cup coral. I mean, I'm looking for the sponges. I'm looking to try to get the pretty sponges and the corals on the side of the wreck. I'm going to try to frame it if I can, and I'm going to try to get in the wreckage because we already know you just can't turn ugly water or a lot of backscatter into that pretty clear. No secrets to that. It is what it is.
And I'll tell you, yeah, how many times I've actually just taken the photo and did it black and white because it's green.
Yeah, okay, yeah, absolutely. And interestingly enough, if you think about it, when you on the specification sheets, and the numbers, they do represent color temperature. Mm-hmm. And you're like, well, who cares? Because your camera's set to auto white balance, which means it's going to try to give you a neutral color. Meaning, when I'm aiming at a yellow seahorse, I want it to be yellow. I want it to be a neutral yellow. I don't want it to be a reddish orange yellow or a bluish yellow. So what's the deal with the color temperature of the strobes? And that's why it indirectly, because the camera adjusts the sliders because you're putting out a warmer light. So the slider, the RGB sensor, is going to, he wants it to be a neutral yellow, but the light is warm, more towards the reddish. So I'm going to slide the sensor over to more the bluish, but it makes the whole scene bluish. So now I've got a neutral yellow, but the blue water in the background is now bluer. So I may not necessarily want a warm color temperature if I've got green water. I may want a bluer, which makes the green greener. So that's why it's an indirect, and it's a little bit weird to understand that. But why else would you put the color temperature on your strobes in the specs? Because nobody is thinking, I want a bluish yellow seahorse. So that's a little bit, but an answer to your question about the green part. And of course, if it's not too bad, you can go and use your HSL slider, which I do use because I use the aqua slider, because when you're taking pictures from a little bit further away and that sand has got more of a light blue tint to it, which is aqua, by desaturating the aqua slider, not the blue necessarily, but the aqua, it'll help make the white sand whiter than the pale blue. But so you can use the HSL sliders in your raw editor, but I don't really try to change green to blue.
And I think I can answer this question for Forrest. He asked, do you use any color filters on the flash?
Yes and no.
Yeah.
With retro, they have 3 different diffusers, just like everybody, Enon does, CNC does. And so you're going to see that the beam angle changes, and they also have on their diffusers, they'll have like a warm diffuser, or it'll be a white diffuser. So back in the day, you could use filters. Well, you still can if you want, but the easiest solution is you need to know 2 things. When it spreads the light to get your desired beam angle, does it change the color temperature? And you just need to know why you're changing the color temperature, and also how it affects the GN. So like if you have the 330s and you're taking shots and you can't understand about the hot spots or the softer spots, so you put the diffuser on there, you don't have a GN of 33 anymore. If you remember back when we looked at the GN and the beam angle, when we put the diffusers on the D2, it went from a GN of 32 When we put the diffuser on over here and change the beam angle from 80 to 120, remember the GN went from 32 to 20. That's a big jump, as in 50%. So if you do decide you want to use filters, you can do that. Home Depot has that little blue sticky stuff where you can reuse it, and then you can just mash it on your the flash, and then you can put the name escapes me, that these different filters that are relatively inexpensive, the orange filters. You can buy, you know, the magic filter on the strobes, but I think it'd be a lot easier if you just use the diffuser and just adjust your strobes accordingly.
Absolutely. So somebody asked a question of, so for continuous flash, built-in flash on the camera doesn't work right. You need to get a trigger, a flash trigger. So yeah, so if you're using your flash, the flash inside the housing is not going to work. You need to have it hooked up either with the cords. There's either the built-in cord or the oh my gosh,
You're talking about fiber optic versus electrical cable?
Right, I'm answering it. So you have to have the fiber optic cable, or you need to have a built-in cable to your housing. That's going to give it to your strobes. The flash that's inside the housing, the little pop-up flash, that's not going to be enough lighting to get what you want for pictures. Yeah.
Yeah. No, the continuous, once again, I shoot 99% manual. So anytime you're telling the camera, okay, you take over and you do aperture priority or program mode or auto, it's not going to work in continuous. If you try to use TTL, it won't work. So everything I do, the only time I ever shoot TTL, or, well, yeah, the only time I ever do that is if I'm doing, let's say, super macro, where being creative is a non-issue, and I may have to use one hand because I've got a reef stick and I'm, you know, in a current, and I just don't have the ability to use two hands. That would be the only time. So I shoot everything manual. So for me, it was a no-brainer. Back button autofocus, because that's all it does is autofocus. When I hit that shutter, it takes the shot. And so as long as I hold that back button, it's continuing to track autofocus. And as long as I hold that shutter, it continues to take those shots. And I've made the decisions.
All right. And one more question. Someone is asking about using the wide angle wet lenses. So I actually shoot the Sony A6500. It's a mirrorless camera. And I do have the Naughty Cam housing for that, and with the port extender, and I am shooting that wet lens. So just to let you know, with wide angle, the one thing that I find, and Wayne and I got to talk about this plenty the last couple of weeks, that I'm finding that the hoods on those wet lenses are creating the black around the edges of my my frame. And so what you can do is either you need to dial and focus it in, or get a different lens, or you can remove those shadows, the shades, yeah, and that would get rid of it, so you can use that to its fullest extent. Because right now I didn't remove them, and I need to, because I want to get out there and get some good Goliath photos, and I don't want to have to zoom my lens in because I'm using a 16 to 50 lens, and that's the only thing I had. Yeah, I probably should put some more lenses in my inventory, but
well, the thing about the wet lens also is that when you they're probably going to tell you a certain lens to use, and then you have to get the appropriate wet lens that matches that, or you may have to find that you need to get extensions of a different size, so that, like, for instance, Nicole's setup is relegating her that she has to zoom out so that she doesn't get fringing and the vignetting. And that is a bit of a bummer. She doesn't get a chance to use her widest setting because she's now capturing the corners of the dome and also the shades. And so the bottom line with that is that your lens and your wet lens combination has to match, or you need to know what extension you need to get the full use of that zoom lens.
Yeah. Okay, so Wayne, they want to know when and where are you diving with the Goliaths next? They all want to come out and pick your brain and
with you, I guess.
Let's go. All right. So since we're talking about that, we are going to raffle off one of our 4C Goliath Grouper dive trips. So let's go ahead and bring into the frame our random name picker. There it is, you guys. So Wayne, really quick, I'm going to go ahead and hit the button and see who our big winner is for the night. And we have Joe Marino. You want to go diving with us? We'll get you out there, Joe. You're our big winner for the night. Awesome. Okay,
cool.
So guys,
Congratulations.
All right. So another thing too, if you go to our website, right now we have a landing page, and it's all about the Goliaths, and it's all about underwater photography stuff that we gave you little bits and pieces. So here is that page. You can go to, and so we actually have last year's presentation, point, shoot, click, Facebook Live. So if some of you think that this was a little too advanced for you and you want to get some basics, you can go to this presentation. Also, we have information on hiring one of our Photo Pro guides and also taking a photography class with one of our Photo Pros. We have multiple in the area that can help you dial in. And if you wanted some tips and tricks on doing Goliath Groupers, check out this video. If you don't have any cameras yet, that's okay. Come see us. Right now, we have in our stores the Parallels rental camera. In each of our stores, it's like a little ATM machine, and you put your card in, you rent a camera. I believe it's $25, and you go out and take pictures of the Parallels camera. It's not a big rig; it's a small one, and then you return it back to the station, and you can download your pictures right onto your phone. And we have lots of things that for you guys to check out. We've got strobes, we've got lighting, we've got accessories, everything that you need to get your cameras in gear to go check out these Goliath Groupers. So check out that page, guys. It'll get you what you need. And Wayne, thank you so much for a great presentation. We appreciate your time and the effort you did to put into this presentation. We know it's not easy to present on photography, but hey, you're one of the best, so that's why we asked you, and we appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Try to do a 200-page book in a half an hour.
Absolutely.
And there's some questions that we can address later. Do you keep a copy of these questions?
No, I've already done it.
Okay,
yep.
Great. Super duper. All right. If anybody else has any, contact Nicole and she can get a hold of me, and we'll go from there.
All righty, guys. Thank you so much, and happy diving with the groupers. We'll see you out there. Bye.
Good to see you all. Good luck. See you out there. Bye-bye.